Good morning, good morning. My name is Luke Everett. I'm the teaching pastor at the church. If you're here to just say welcome, we'd love to know you a little bit better. A couple of ways that you can get to know us a little bit better is, first of all, right in front of you there is a brochure up and take it home about who we are, Christian Church. Another way to get to know us is the connection card. It should have been in your bulletins. If not, they're in the back lobby area there for you to pick up. Pick up a connection card, fill it out, and just put it in an offering plate or one of our tithe boxes, and they will get that and contact you with your permission. And would love to talk to you and just let you know more about us. The second thing that we want to let you know about is what we call prayer cards. If you have someone in your life that you'd like to pray for and let them encourage them during the week, and fill their name out and just maybe write them a note that you're praying for them, write them at some point, and also just drop those in the offering plate or drop those in the tithe boxes. And what we do with those cards is we'll get those, divvy them out, and we will mail those for you. If there's someone that you write down and you think we may not have their address, what we ask you to do is just fill out their address on the card or put it somewhere near the card for us so we can get to the right person. And again, we'd love to mail those out for you. The third thing that we want to let you know about is every week we celebrate the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ and what that means to us. And we do this every week. We invite anyone, member or not, whether you believe to participate in that with us. And so we invite you to do that. We'll plate of bread and then take it for yourself. Take time to reflect on your own, and then take it at your convenience. Here, after this, we're doing. Well, hopefully, every one of you guys got a sticker. We love this Sunday because talking to people. Here's how the sticker Sunday. Here's how it works. In a second here, you're going to hear some music. And what we want you to do is we want you to stand up and we want you to find people across from you. People, one person you know, one person maybe. I want you to introduce yourself. You do one of two things. A, you give them a compliment. So give, and the second thing we encourage. Now, positive touch is like a pat on the back or a shake on the hand, there's something like that. If you don't know them, we don't encourage you to just go in and bear hug. That is not comfortable for people. And some people are like, no touching, okay? And that's fine, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. You can just introduce yourself. But after you do that with your people, just take a sticker and give it to them, and they can stick it. Okay? That's just how we do it, okay? It may be weird to you, but we love this because we just love to see people walk out with stickers. Okay, so, all right, here we go. When the music starts playing, this is when you're supposed to do it. Now, we've had some problems with you adults here. You don't sit down all the time when the music stops, okay? We're going to give you an amount of time. This is the same problem we have with the younger kids when we do this as well, okay? It happens all the time. People just love interacting, okay? So when the music stops, we'll give you some time. We encourage you to go back to your seat. Switch seats on Sunday. ready? When the music starts. Go ahead, guys.
Good morning, everyone. I know you're making your way back to your seats. I'm not going to get on in. Look, you did it, guys. Thank you. You guys know what the drill is. How is everybody? Everybody good? Did y'all have as sad a day yesterday as I had? My son Jack ever came down the stairs with a Bluetooth speaker over his head blaring Rocky Top. He was ready. It was good. At the end of the day, we had Annie singing "The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow." The food started off party food, and then it was like comfort food. We just couldn't stop eating. But what do you do? It'll happen. They'll get better. I completely believe in them. We are in, I think this is week 3 of our series called #Blessed. Let me give a little bit of a rundown for those of you who may be new to the church. We do both what we call Bible series and then what we call Life series. The Bible series are like the things that we did this summer. We spent 10 weeks in a book of the Bible, the book of Esther, and we just went chapter by chapter getting to know that book of the Bible. We go to the scriptures and we say, what do the scriptures say? And then we learn stuff about life as we read the Bible stories. In a Life series, we kind of come at it just basically from the opposite direction. We ask questions about life, and then we go to the scriptures to find biblical principles for that aspect of life. So the thing that we're going through in this #Blessed series is, what does it really mean to be blessed? We talk about this idea of being blessed, and we usually talk about things in our life like relationships and wealth and jobs and those sorts of things, which are all incredible blessings that God can give us. But we also know that we can get every single one of those things and still be miserable people. And so what are the deeper blessings? What are the deeper blessings that God wants to give us in our life? And to set up what we're going to be talking about today, I've got a few fill-in-the-blank things. And since you all have already gotten your warm-up on with the whole sticker thing talking here in church, I want you to kind of talk back to me as we go through these things. This is going to help us understand what we're talking about in today's series. So let's put these fill-in-the-blank things up here on the screen. These are kind of common sayings, and I want you all to just yell out or maybe fill in the blank what you think it is. He's just going through the motions. Good. That's very nice. I was hoping everybody would get that first one. All right. So don't just blank it in. Anybody got a guess on that one? That's kind of a little bit harder. Huh? Phone it in. Yes. Very good. Don't just phone it in. Right. Here's the one. And I put the first letter of this one because I was a little bit worried about some of you, what you might say of this one. She really gave a blank effort. The first letter is T. Team effort. Opposite of that. The opposite of terrific. Terrible. It could be terrible. That's really good. Have you ever heard token effort? Have you ever heard this? Right? A token effort. Going through the motions, phoning it in, And then the last one, you could tell he's just got it on cruise control. That's exactly right. All of these things summarize a little bit about what we are going to be talking about today. We know what it's like to check out, don't we? We know what it's like to check out. Every single one of us has had this experience in some way or another. Senioritis. Anybody get a bad case of senioritis when you're going through school? It's that last semester. I remember when I started off seminary, I was like, first semester, I was like, I'm busting up the curve on all the tests. I'm studying hard. And then by the end of my time in seminary, the very last semester, I'm like, D's not that bad. I mean, it's passing. Do you remember when they used to give the little explanations of the grades? They used to do this on report cards. I don't know what it is now, but it would say like A is excellent, and then it would say B is above average, and C was average. But do you remember what D was? Making progress. Yeah. It was like, well, not if you started A. It's not. It's got to go in the other direction. I guess they just didn't want to say, come on, man. So they just said put something in there. But we know what this is like. The last couple of weeks after the TCAPs, if you got kids in school, you take the TCAP test, and then you got those 2 weeks of school that are after the TCAP test where everybody has checked out, right? We don't know why we have to keep going to school. I guess we got to check it off the box. So everybody's just going through the motions, and everybody's feeling the same way, no matter if you're a teacher or a student. But what we know is this. We know that we also have experiences where we check out in life on things that really, really matter. Things that aren't ending in just a couple of weeks. Things like our marriages. Things like our faith. We can check out on those things too. And I thought there's this quote by Albert Einstein that I think is applicable to what we're going to be talking about today. Albert Einstein said, "The world won't be destroyed by those that do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything." The world won't be destroyed by those that do evil, but it'll be destroyed by those who watch them without doing anything. Now, I don't think you guys are responsible for destroying the world. I'm not saying that this morning. But what I am saying is we watch really, really important parts of our lives disintegrate. We watch really, really important parts of our lives fall apart without doing anything. And we want to talk about that today. Because what I believe is that when Jesus says to us that I want us to live life to the fullest, he wants us to go through life with him and experience all that God has for us in this life, all of the wonderful blessings that he showers upon us. And I think that lack of passion, wherever it might be in your life, because for every person in this room, there's a different place maybe that's impacting you. But what I believe is that lack of passion that you might be feeling in that particular area, that's not what God wants for you. So today, what we want to do is ask this question: how might God bless me when I have checked out? How might God bless me when I have checked out? We're going to do that by looking at a character. Luke actually spent a couple of weeks with this person from the scriptures earlier this year. We're going to dig into his life a little bit more today, a guy named Nehemiah. So if you want to follow along with me, just open your Bible and scroll down to the first chapter of Nehemiah, and we'll get into it. But before we get straight into the text, we got to make sure we set the stage so that everybody knows what point in history we're talking about. Back when we did the Esther series, I taught you guys this little principle about the ABCs of the Jewish exile. This is a term that is often used when talking about the Bible, and it's good if you have some kind of knowledge about when this time period was. So I want to see if you guys were listening, or see if you guys have maybe learned this. The ABCs of the Jewish exile. Now, this is the timeline. This over here, 2018 is today. 0 is when Jesus was walking the face of the earth. And so we're going to back it up to all the way 722 years before Jesus. This is when an empire came in and started destroying the land of Israel. Does anybody remember what the A stands for? You remember this empire? Assyrian. Yeah, you whispered it because you weren't sure, but you did it. Yeah, that's what happened in 722. They started to destroy and take away leaders from the northern part of Israel. 586. Really, it started about 10 years prior, but the big exile happened by an empire in 586, an empire that starts with a B. Anybody? Babylon. There you go. More confidence now. Now, this next one is not an empire, but it is a ruler. 539 is sort of the unofficial end of the exile, but there were still some things going on that had to be resolved. But there was a leader that came about that let people from the land of Israel, the Jews, get to go back into their homeland. That leader's name starts with a C. Anybody remember? Cyrus, right, Cyrus of Persia. That's when the Persian Empire took over. And so he allowed people, one of their ways that they kept people happy under their empire was, instead of destroying everything that you believed in, we would let you believe things. The Persians would let you believe things and kind of have your own little territory so long as you pledged allegiance and paid your taxes to us. Same thing that the Greeks and the Romans would do after them. That was 539. So during this time, in the years following, some people began to make their way back into the land of Israel. But there was a guy whose story we encounter in the scriptures that wasn't quite there yet when we begin his story. He is still in a land or a city called Susa, which is a capital city of the Persian Empire. Okay, that's where we find Nehemiah when this story starts. So I want to start reading together at this point. Nehemiah chapter 1. Just starting right there with verse 1. The words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah, which is a great name. In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanini, another great name, one of my brothers came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and I wept. For some days I mourned and I fasted and I prayed before the God of heaven. Now, this moment in Nehemiah's life begins a really incredible journey. This guy, after this moment, after these days of mourning, he is able to go get all of the supplies for rebuilding the wall donated. He's able to go back to this land and start to rally people together. He is able to inspire the masses to work really, really hard. And he's able to rebuild this wall in guess how many days? Anybody? 52 days. It's just insane what he is able to do. And when you look at what he's able to do, and all the while he's fending off attacks from the outside. It's mind-boggling that he was able to do this. You look at him and you say, this guy was born to lead. He was born for this moment. He has all of the tools to do this, which begs the question, why did it take him so long to do it? Why did it take him so long to do it? Because I want to show you something. It's actually from a previous book in the scriptures, Ezra. Ezra chapter 7, verses 7 and 8. Ezra was a contemporary of Nehemiah. These guys worked together. They were alive at the same time. Many people believe they were maybe even approximately the same age. Ezra chapter 7, verses 7 through 8. Some of the Israelites, including priests, Levites, musicians, gatekeepers, temple servants, also came to Jerusalem in the 7th year of King Artaxerxes. They had different names for kings. Just don't let that throw you off. We'll keep going. Ezra arrived in Jerusalem in the 5th month of the 7th year of the king. My math people, help me out here. Ezra arrived in the 7th year of the king. Nehemiah arrived in the 20th year of the king. How long did you wait? 7th year, 20th year, little math. Thank you. Everybody was afraid of the math. Last week when we were in the book of Numbers, I promised you no math. And so that's why, because everybody is afraid of math. At least 13 years that this crew of pioneers packed up in Susa, or packed up from that area and said, hey, we are heading back. And Nehemiah says, great, good luck, guys. Well, I'll pray for you. And they took off and went back. And it was 13 years before Nehemiah, who ends up doing something that we're like, man, you were born to do that. You were so good at it. It was 13 years before he did it. And I think there's a clue as to why. At the very end of the first chapter of Nehemiah, very, very last sentence, there's something written that I think is really, really important. It's a tiny little sentence. Nehemiah chapter 1, last verse, 11th verse, the very end of it. I was the cupbearer to the king. Nehemiah was the cupbearer to the king. This was a really important role that he had ascended to. Nehemiah was probably from a leadership type family in Israel. When they shipped people off during the exile, they focused in first of all the people who had the leader families, the political families, the people maybe who were prone to be leaders. And so Nehemiah was probably shipped off at that point, or at least his family was, and he came later. But Nehemiah was one of these people who was probably a leader, and he worked his way up pretty quickly to becoming the cupbearer to the king. And this is a job that had some major perks. First of all, as the cupbearer, it's right there in the name. Part of his responsibility was tasting the wine before the king got to drink it, okay? This is what he did as his job, okay? And some of you are thinking, wow, that is like the best job ever, okay? That's what you do, is you get to taste wine. And it's not just any wine, okay? It's wine that the king was going to drink. And so it's the greatest wine that this guy Nehemiah has to taste, and make sure that's all good. And so first of all, he's got that perk. The second perk that Nehemiah has in this is he gets to have counsel. He gets to feel like his ideas and opinions are heard with one of the most powerful people in the world. So he gets to mingle with influence. He gets to rub elbows with people who are in high society, so to speak. The other thing that he gets is what all of us would consider a really lavish lifestyle. He got to be part of the Citadel of Susa in one of the coolest empires. When you go back and you look at all that the Persians did and what they were about, that there's been on earth. And he gets to live in this town free of charge because he is cupbearer to the king. It would be really, really hard to give that up and take off and head back to Jerusalem where the gates are burning and the people are being attacked with it. It reminds me of a story, the ancient classic, The Odyssey, right? Homer, not Homer Simpson, the other Homer. The other one, Homer wrote the great classic, The Odyssey. And one of the tales that is told during the book of The Odyssey is Odysseus and all of his men, they're on this long trek back home, maybe 20 years or so that they're out at sea and they're trying to get home and they face all kinds of peril. And this drawing right here is a drawing from a little episode that they have that's called When They Landed in the Land of the Lotus Eaters. And I want to read you about what happened because this is happening right here at the end of this story. What happened was this. There was a hurricane and it blew their boat off course and they sailed around for just a little while and they ended up finding some land where they could weigh down and check to make sure the boat wasn't damaged too bad and go get some fresh water and that sort of thing. So after they had been blown off course by the hurricane, Homer writes, he's telling the story of Odysseus. So Odysseus, I guess technically, writes, "Here we landed to take in fresh water, and our crews got their midday meal on the shore near the ships. When they had eaten and drunk, I sent two of my company to see what manner of men the people of the place, that this island, what kind of people these might be, and they had a third man under them. They started at once and went about among the lotus eaters, who did them no hurt, but gave them to eat of the lotus, which was so delicious that those who ate it left off carrying about home and didn't even want to go back and say what had happened to them. But they were for staying and munching lotus with the lotus eaters without thinking further of their own return. Nevertheless, though they wept bitterly, I forced them back to the ships and made them fast under the benches," which means he literally ties them to the benches so that they can't go back and eat more lotus and not care about going home. Then I told the rest to go on board at once, lest any of them should taste of the lotus and leave off wanting to get home. So they took their places and smote the great sea, which is a great word, with their oars. The lotus plant is what did them in. As I was thinking about this story, and I was thinking about Nehemiah and this idea, his lotus was his powerful, maybe even comfortable position that he found. And as I thought about this story of the lotus eaters, the men who had this amazing inspiration to stay at sea, to get home, this home they had been searching for, this home they had been trying to get to, and yet, even they were compelled to want to just take a break, to to want to just forget about all the trouble of the sea, to forget about going back home. And as I was doing a little research on this, I came across a special that the History Channel did, and one of the narrators of this is it's a professor. I actually tried to find his name, but I struggled to find his name. It's in a special called The Clash of the Gods on the History Channel. He wrote concerning the Lotus Eaters this interesting thought. He said, it's this incredibly short episode, the little story about the Lotus Eaters. It's an incredibly short episode, and yet it's been written about so much. And I think the reason is because everybody knows this experience. Everybody's tired. Everybody's been through too much. What could be more attractive than to eat or drink or smoke or ingest something that would just let you forget? They had been through a hurricane. They had been through all kinds of trials at sea. You can kind of understand why they just wanted to eat the lotus and check out. And yet, man, what was at stake? I think about us. I think about those of us sitting in this room. And I think that most people in here, you're not necessarily looking to ingest something and make it all forget. Maybe some of you are. But I do think that most of us know that doing it that way ends up causing more trouble than it cures. I think for most of us, what it looks like is this quote by a pastor named Brian Jones. He wrote a book called Finding Favor, and he writes this. He says, we eventually get to the point where our enemy stops using full frontal assaults. It's not just the lotus. It's not just ingesting something or smoking something. He stops using full frontal assaults and instead begins orchestrating a master strategy of deception built on tiny compromises. It's Brian Jones from the book Finding Favor. This has been going on in our faith for so long, this idea of checking out, that the ancient Christian monks actually had a word for it. The word was acedia. It's a Latin word, the the a, the that's at the beginning just means not, and the acedia at the end comes from a word that means care. And so it just means, I just don't care anymore. And what I want to say to you, or call your attention to, is that there may be those places in your life that you've come to that point. Maybe it's because of a hurricane. Maybe it's because of just a really tumultuous and difficult journey. But you've come to the point that you say, you know what? I'm going to find something else to do. And those habits, those tiny compromises, have become your lotus. And acedia has sunk in. You can't even remember what it's like to care about that thing anymore. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is for you. I'm offering you this as a way to simply consider, a way to think about where God might be working in your life. But I know I've been there, and I know it happens to the best of us. It happened to even Nehemiah, this man who ended up doing amazing things for the faith, got to a point in his life where he had tasted the lotus, and it was easier to stay in Susa than to deal with the prospect of going back home. Tiny compromises that Brian Jones writes about. I think they start with little phrases that we all know. And the tiny little compromises start with it'll just start tomorrow. So I know I need to eat more broccoli, right? I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm eating broccoli. It's just ones, right? And I know that so often it's like, man, it's so pretty outside. I'm just going to sleep in into the mountains instead of going to church tomorrow. And so you say to ourselves, it's just ones. It's not going to be pretty again until like Tuesday. So I got to do it now, right? It's not that big of a deal, right? We see our child maybe be disrespectful to authority. We're like, oh, kids are big kids. It's not that big of a deal. He's just doing that. But the reality is, these things, these tiny compromises can be. There's a couple of things I want us to consider about the lotus. The things that we may accept in our life to numb the pain. Whether those tiny little compromises. The first thing is this. Consider the trajectory, not just the compromise. Consider the trajectory, not just the compromise. And I want to give you an example just from the world of maps for you. Tiny little changes in in your trajectory can make a huge impact, right? They can make a huge impact. Let me just give you a for example. If I were to start walking, no, not walking, driving. If I were to start driving, I don't want to walk this far. If I were to start driving and I went about 5.5 hours this way, I would end up on the beach, right? Let's all just kind of go there for a second. Close your eyes. 5.5 hours that way. I'm beaching it. All right, that's good. Right. Tiny little adjustment in my trajectory. Okay? Tiny little adjustment. If I end up going this way for 5.5 hours, I end up in Nanky-Poo, Tennessee. I'm being serious. That is a place. It is a place, Nanky-Poo, Tennessee. And first of all, to all the people who are from Nanky-Poo and you're watching this on YouTube, no offense, I'm sure, you would rather be at the beach than Jefferson City. So I know you can make fun of us, but this is literally a screenshot from Nanky-Poo's website that I took. They've got a rundown grocery store, an electrical pole, and a cell phone tower. That is what is on the webpage of Nanky-Poo, Tennessee. Now, beach, right? The marvel of God's ocean, right? Or cell phone tower. Big changes, tiny little compromises. They can matter a whole lot. There's a book of wisdom in the scriptures, Proverbs, full of wise sayings. In Proverbs chapter 20, verse 4, it reads that the sluggard does not plow in season. So at harvest time, they look, but they find nothing. I don't know what God might be bringing to your mind today. As I'm going through this message, as I'm laying this out here for you, and perhaps God is doing something in your heart. I don't know what it is, but I do know this. Years down the road, you want there to be a harvest in that area of your life, don't you? That's why we have to plow in season. That's why the trajectory, the way we point ourselves today matters. The little things that we can do today matter. The second thing that I want to remind you or call to your attention about Lotus is this idea that we can't let the short-term benefit of not caring outweigh the long-term consequence. And this is very similar to the first thing, but the thing that I want you to focus on is this. There are benefits to not caring, right? We know this. There are benefits to not caring. I get to sleep in, right? That's a major benefit if I'm just not going to care. I don't have to have the difficult conversation that part of my life might require. I don't have to make budget cuts, right? If I don't want to care about my finances and how those are going and not necessarily having a harvest on down the road, then I don't have to make any budget cuts. There are benefits to not caring. But we all know that there are long-term consequences. And what I find so interesting about this is we all apply this principle to other areas of our lives. We know that you don't weed the garden, then that's going to affect your harvest. We teach our kids, hey, do a little study. Keep up with your studies every week. That way you don't have to pull the all-nighter when the test rolls around. We teach them this sort of stuff. Keep up with it. We know that we need to get our oil change in our car, right? Because the short-term benefit of not spending time on that can't outweigh the long-term consequence of our engine blowing up. What I want to consider, what I want to challenge in your life today is let's take that same principle and to apply it to whatever the important part of your life is that God is laying on your heart right now. With Nehemiah, it was happening and something turned it around. And I want to draw your attention to something. It's three quick little verses that happen throughout his book. From chapter 1, he was praying this prayer. He did it in chapter 1, he did it in chapter 5, he did it again in chapter 13, and I think it was absolutely vital. 1:11, he says, grant me favor. Get ready to have that conversation with the king. Nehemiah chapter 5, verse 19, remember me with favor. God, I want your blessing in this area. Nehemiah chapter 13, again, the same exact prayer. Remember me with favor. The question, when do you think he started praying like this? I mean, he was praying like this from day 1 in this book. You know what I think? I think probably somewhere along the way during that 13 years of eating lotus, he said, God, I want to know what your favor really looks like. I want to know what your blessing really looks like. And he thought maybe it was just more perks of being cupbearer. But that's not how God blessed his life. God blessed his life through what we saw in chapter 1. How did God answer his prayer? He answered it with a broken heart. He answered it with an unquieted soul. A soul that couldn't find rest, couldn't find sleep. To put it plainly, he got angry. He got angry. There were probably a 1,000 times in those 13 years that he said, you know what, I should really ask about the Israelites. I mean, he had access. He had access to these people. He was high up in the political realm, the government realm. He could have gotten word if he wanted to. But as he sat there and thought, man, I should ask about the Israelites, he then said, on second thought, I should taste more wine. And maybe that's been happening in your life. That God has every once in a while been disturbing your soul about something. And you found a lotus. You found a tiny little compromise that is going to matter so deeply later. The good news for you is this. This is kind of like good news, bad news, right? The good news for you is this. Being bothered, having something going on in your heart or your soul, or getting upset about something. The good news is this. Being bothered is a blessing. Being bothered is a blessing. If you got a lion inside you that's on the prowl, you're not sure what it is, let that thing hunt. Let it find what it is that's disturbing your soul. Don't quiet it, but let it hunt. I had something going on in my life a few years ago. I was getting into running, and I was putting on some pretty serious miles each week into doing the running thing. And then all of a sudden, my Achilles tendons, those areas, just started killing me. And it was getting to the point to where I would try to go running, and for the first probably half mile of my run, I was like, So people were like, why is he doing that? But finally, after a while, it would start to loosen up, and I would get going. And literally, for over a year, I was trying to figure out what in the world is going on. I was trying all kinds of exercises to improve flexibility. I was trying calf raises and stuff to try to improve strength in that area of my body. I was thinking about food and reducing inflammation and all this different stuff. Like, what in the world is going on? And what I finally found by being persistent was that I was one of these idiots who bought into the whole minimalist shoe thing. I don't know how many of you are kind of into that, but basically it's where you have less cushioning. Some of you are like, yeah, I was the idiot too. Maybe not the idiot. I was the idiot. Hey, it's where you have less cushioning in your shoe, basically. You get a feel for the road. They said it made your stride more natural, but this is not very natural. The reality is this. If I had done a little bit more research before I made the switch, I would have realized that you have to go through months and months of training to build up your flexibility in your Achilles tendons before you make the switch. I didn't. I just went and bought the shoes. I changed the shoes, and within weeks, the pain was gone. I didn't stop until I found an answer. What I'm saying is, if God is troubling you, if he's causing a pain, if he's causing a frustration and an anger, let that dog hunt. Let it find what is causing the source of that. And don't compromise until you start to chip away at it. God does not want you to live a life of checking out. He wants you to live life to the fullest. He wants you to know the passion and the pleasure and the peace and the joy of following and walking with him. I want that for you. And so I'm not telling you what it is in your life, because for every single person sitting here in this room, there could be something different. Man, but what if? What if every person in this room didn't stop until they listened to the unquieted heart? Man, the blessing that God could have in our marriages, in our homes, in our community, in our neighborhood, in our church, if we would listen to it and not compromise. I want to end today with one more quote from a theologian, Jürgen Moltmann. says faith, whenever it develops into hope, faith and hope, good things, it causes not unrest, not patience, but impatience. It does not calm the unquieted heart, but it is itself the unquiet heart in man. Those who hope in Christ can no longer put up with reality as it is. And so my prayer for you today is that God gets on your nerves. My prayer for you today is that God annoys you. That God doesn't let you rest until you can no longer put up with reality as it is. Because what we learned from Nehemiah is that being bothered can be an incredible blessing. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the work that you're doing in our lives. We confess that the lotus is tempting. We confess that there are so many options for numbing the pain. There are so many options to neglect what you're putting on our hearts. And my prayer this morning is for us to lay those things aside so that you can clarify for each person in this room where you have tremendous blessing for them, where you have joy that is unrealized, where you have peace that is unattained, where you have blessing that for so too long we've not accepted. Bless us, Heavenly Father, today by bothering us. We thank you for Jesus, who gives us this opportunity to talk to you, to walk with you.